In this video, we're going to take a look at two different ways that we can implement this key property and make this warning message go away. The reason I'm going to show you two different ways is that when you start to look at some documentation and blog posts and whatnot, you're going to very frequently see both of these different ways of adding in a key prop. Sometimes it's going to be really convenient to use one way, sometimes it'll be convenient to use the other way, and it's really going to be up to you which way to use. Okay, so let me show you the first way we can do this. The first way to add in a key prop and allow React Native to essentially associate one of these objects right here with what appears on the screen is to find these original objects, and to each object, we're going to add in a key property. The requirement of a key property is that it must be a string. It must be consistent between renders, and it must be unique compared to all the other objects inside of our array of data. So in this case, I might put in a key right here of just like 1. And notice how 1 is a string. If we put in a key as a number, we're still going to get a warning message because it has to be a string, not a number. Then on the next one, I could do a key of 2 and essentially repeat the process going down. So I'm going to just copy paste here really quickly. And I'll update each one to be unique. Okay, so now if I save this, the warning message goes away because now we're providing that key property. So this is the first way that you might see a key being designated for a flat list element. Essentially, we add in a key property to each of the original objects. The only requirement, once again, is that it must be a string and it must be unique compared to all the other elements inside the array. You'll notice that if we change, say, key number 2 right here to be 1 as well, we now have two elements with a key of 1. This is going to confuse React Native. Because remember, it's essentially using that key to tie some object to some element that gets displayed on the screen. So if there are two elements on the screen with the same key and two objects inside of our array, if we now delete one of these objects right here, React Native is going to say, hey, well, now there's no longer a key of A appearing twice, so which one of these two should I delete? And it gets really unclear to React Native as to which one of these it should clean up. So let's try this out. I'll save this with the two identical keys, and you'll very quickly see a warning message here that says two identical keys of 1. And it tells us very distinctly these keys have to be unique. Okay, so I'll change that back to key 2, and the warning goes away. Very good. All right, so that's method 1 of defining our key prop. I'm now going to show you method 2. So I'm going to delete all these extra key properties that I just added on. Okay, and I'm back to the code I had before. So the second way of defining this key property is on our flat list component itself. On the flat list component, I'm going to add in a new prop of key extractor. I'm going to pass this thing a function. This function is going to be called many different times. It's going to be called with a single argument that we're going to call friend. So this friend argument right here is going to be first this object, then this object, then this object, and so on. So our key extractor will be called with every object inside of our array. Inside this function, we have to inspect that object and then return the key property to use for it. So the only difference here is that now we're going to essentially define our key property kind of like at runtime right here when we pass our data into flat list, as opposed to kind of ahead of time on our list of friend objects. So once again, we can return some unique character or some unique string that is consistent across re-renders of our list. So in this case, we might try using, say, our name property. Notice how the name property is a string, so that suits requirement number 1 of being a key, and it's unique compared to all of the different objects inside of our array. So this name property would be perfect to use as a key as well. It doesn't have to be a number that, or a string that contains a number. It can be any string of characters. It just has to be unique. That's the only requirement. So from key extractor, we could return friend.name. So now we're using that name property as our key. So now I can save this, and once again, we no longer see that warning message. All right, so once again, that's two different ways to solve this key issue. You're going to see both methods used very frequently inside of documentation. In this course, you and I are going to kind of favor this key extractor approach because it's one tiny line of code, and it doesn't require us to modify these original objects right here. In general, whenever we're working with some data like this, some array of objects, we really want to keep just the data related to that object inside the object itself. So what I mean by that is right now we have an array of friends. So all these objects should really only contain data related to being a friend. In this case, it just means it has a name. If we start to add in a new key property, then we're starting to tie some information from the view side of our application, like what appears on the screen, to our data objects, which is generally not a very good approach. So like I said, we're going to favor this key extractor approach as much as possible inside this course. All right, so now we've got this problem fixed up, let's take a quick pause right here and continue in the next video.